So even though we are going to talk now about technology and how technology has made things easier, that doesn't mean that effort is still not required. Because for many of us, we may hear hundreds or thousands of lectures on YouTube or social media, but it's what? In one ear and out the other. Come at the end and say, brothers, what did you learn? Summarize for me, give me some points. Nothing. You see some people, they've been sitting in the classes for months, for years, then you come and you quiz them on basic things, and they act like it's the first time they're ever hearing about such a topic, even though they attended multiple classes on the same topic. So definitely, we will not learn if effort is not being put. Effort means taking notes in the class, going back and reviewing and memorizing. And if you look at what the past generations had to go through, they would, for example, have no such thing as electricity. And they couldn't even have money to afford fuel for the lantern. So they had to choose, will I use my money to buy, for example, paper and writing implements so that I can continue seeking knowledge, or I'm going to buy food and fuel for the lantern and basics I need to live. So some of them, when they wanted to remain all night studying and learning, what they would end up doing is they would go by the light of the moon. Can you imagine? They would get down to the point, as I said, where they had to choose between, am I going to go hungry today, or use that money to buy food, or use that money to buy supplies that I need to continue writing and to continue learning, and so on and so forth. But these great sacrifices and this struggle that they went through brought about the huge results that we can see when we read about their lives. Another story, Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah, he was born in Uzbekistan, what is today modern day Uzbekistan. He was born blind. Yes? As a baby, he was born blind. His mother was a strong believer, and she never lost hope, and she made dua, and she made dua, and she made dua, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cured him and gave him his vision back. She was a widow, and Imam Bukhari is an orphan. In Islam, you're an orphan if you don't have your father to take care of you and spend on you. So, despite that, she travels to Mecca, and she wants her son to get one thing, an Islamic education. Look at the sacrifices that are being made, right? So she would bring him to the scholars' circles, and she would wait for him so that he could excel and learn from the best scholars of hadith. He would travel later on to distant villages in search of the most authentic sayings of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and this is why today we have his collection Sahih al-Bukhari, which is the most authentic book after the Quran, the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. At the same example, in Baghdad, in Iraq, it's cold, it's early in the morning, and you find that a mother is waking up her son, she's wrapping him up, and she's walking with him in the darkness of the night to the masjid, and then she sits and she waits for him so he can learn from the greatest of scholars, and he grows up to be who? To be Imam Ahmad rahimahullah. So these scholars were not only alone, it was their parents, in many cases even single mother, who was making great sacrifices so that they could reach to the levels that they reached. Now, as we mentioned, technology is a tool, and tools, they can be used for good or bad. It's a double-edged sword in actuality, right? So for us to come and say, you know, Google is awful, using the internet to search and seek knowledge is something horrible, you should never do it, well, that would not be the case actually. But there are some guidelines, we need to have some tools to ensure that we use it properly. There are keys that will open the doors of knowledge for us. One of the problems that we do experience as a result of technology is information overload. And if a person really, really wants to seek knowledge and wants to benefit, then they have to turn down some of that noise. As one Sheikh told me when I was learning Quran from him, he said, you have too much noise in your life. I said, what do you mean by noise? He said, all these things that you have going on. You have this events, and you have this thing, and you have that, and you have to turn all that down if you really want to learn. if you really want to benefit. Because otherwise your mind is what? Pulled in all different directions. So for some people, they have so many different platforms of social media, they have so many different outlets by which they're getting bombarded, that even if you are using them to participate in Islamic things, it's almost like your efforts will get watered down. Why? Because it's just too much that's coming in. You cannot remember, you cannot benefit, you don't even have the time and the ability to validate and verify. Because many of our brothers and sisters, with the best of intentions, and they are trustworthy and we know them and love them, but they forward to us all kinds of stuff, and in the end that stuff is fabricated and it's junk. But the person didn't have the ability or the time to go ahead and validate and verify, and they said, hey, it came to me from a friend, someone I trust, so I'm going to forward it on, and suddenly all kinds of useless or even misguiding information is being sent around. And this is one of the dangers, of course, of social media and using technology in making da'wah or in seeking knowledge. Now, since it's a tool and it can be used for good or evil, the other problem that we have to be on the lookout for is that also the enemies of Allah are using those same tools, but with a completely different intention. So constantly people are sending me sites, or as I do some checks for sites that we can share, especially with non-Muslims or new Muslims, we find entire websites that are made by non-Muslims pretending to be Muslims. And the whole intention is to spread misinformation and to misguide people and then try to trick them or pull them into their religion or their sect or whatever it might be. And we would say, why would someone do that? Why would someone be that devious? But unfortunately, there are people out there that are like that. And it's a case of when you don't have a good product to offer, then you try to disfigure the product of the other person. So for example, I remember in the United States, we set up a booth for da'wah. And we would set up that booth every year. It was at an event, for example, Earth Day. Right? They will have an Earth Day, there will be a huge carnival and there are booths. So we said we'll set up a booth, we're not going to sell anything, we're just going to give out pamphlets and booklets and explain Islam to people. So a non-Muslim group would come and they would set up a booth right across from us. No problem, set up your booth, talk about your religion. No, they will not present their religion, they would make it an anti-Islam booth. Ajib. If you have something good to offer, then display what you have. They were Christians in this case, for example, then display your booklets, explain to people, call people to your religion. Why would you make your booth anti-Islam? It doesn't make sense. But if you don't have much to offer, then you try just to attack the other side. What would they do? They would make pamphlets. They would take, for example, a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, but they would take half of it. They would cut it off. And people are not aware that, oops, there's the rest of the sentence. It's ... right? They would just bring part of the wording, and then they would say, look what the messenger of the Muslims said. And then they would make an analysis of that and try to attack Islam. They would take a verse of Quran and say, look at what this verse says, not looking at the verse that came right before it or right after it, which gave the context and explained what the verse is talking about, for example, right? Taking things out of context, misinterpreting, and trying to damage the image of Islam in those people's minds. So websites like this exist, and there are groups that actually spend lots of money, lots of time, lots of effort to try to misguide Muslims, unfortunately. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. So this is one of the harms of us just randomly going to Google and trying to search on a topic without knowing what websites have already been vetted. What websites are ones that trusted Muslim scholars and students of knowledge recommend, and that when you get information from those sites, you can be assured that the information is accurate, inshallah. Another phenomenon that occurs when we talk about using technology is that some people, they go to Google with a completely wrong intention. And their intention is that they want to do fatwa shopping. What's fatwa shopping? Someone tells me, hey, it's haram for you to take a interest-based loan to buy a house. But I want to buy a house with that loan, because there's no Islamic banking in my country, so on and so forth. I feel that it's going to be difficult for me to do things the Islamic way, so I'm looking for a way out. So I will do the search, just to try to find, is there any group, is there any scholar, is there anyone out there that has said, this is halal? So my goal is what? It's not necessarily to find the truth, it's to try to legitimize and justify what I want to do. This is a problem. Because when the person seeking a fatwa comes to the mufti, their goal must be, I want to find out what is the truth. I want to know what Allah wants from me. Right? Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, when he wrote a book talking to the muftis, he says, إِعْلَامَ الْمُوَقِّعِينَ عَنْ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. This is a notice to those who are signing on behalf of Allah. The mufti is signing on behalf of Allah. You are saying as a mufti, this is what I believe Allah wants. This is what I believe Allah and His Messenger would say regarding this question and this issue you have come to me with. Right? So the person who comes is coming with the intention of, here I am, I want to know what Allah wants from me, and I'm ready to follow what Allah wants, even if it goes against my own desires. Even if it's not going to be easily and convenient for me in the way that I imagine. Why? Because I believe and I know that Allah wants good for me. And if this is what Allah and His religion have said, then I'm ready to follow. Why? Because the believer's attitude is always سَمِعْنَا وَأَطَعْنَا. I heard and I'm ready to obey. That's it. I heard what the ruling is, I'm ready to obey it. This is the submission that comes with Islam. Islam is to what? To surrender, to submit. The Muslim is the one who surrenders and submits his will to the will of Allah. Meaning he's willing to do what Allah asks, even if his personal desires and his personality and so on and so forth. Right? So if we approach the internet saying, how can I find someone who can give me a way out and give me a fatwa saying that this thing is lawful, this is problematic. Because the scholars have said, if you try to follow and look for the what's the word in English to use? The mistaken fatwas of scholars, in where they have given some kind of an easy fatwa that people feel gives them a way out, if you try to follow those and you combine them together, you will come up with the worst religion ever. So you may find some scholars in the past that talked about certain drink, for example, that some scholars said this is an intoxicant, it's haram to drink. But other scholars considered that one okay to drink. And then there are scholars who, when approached about certain type of music and dancing and so on, they would say this one is okay as well. And then there are scholars that considered certain type of relationship between men and women, even though it's not really a valid marriage, but they want to get together in a temporary way to have relations with each other, it's valid. So if you come and gather all these fatwas together, suddenly the one who's going to the nightclub, drinking alcohol and committing zina, he says, I have all the fatwas to justify what I'm doing. And his religion is completely far away from the religion of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? So this is a problem. If we do fatwa shopping and we try to find for the cheapest and easiest way out in every case, not searching sincerely for the truth, then we will come out with a messed up version of Islam. Is that clear? Now, can we though blanketly say that technology is wrong? Now the brothers, mashallah, they put on me 5 microphones. They told me I'm streaming on all different platforms. Allahu Akbar, right? We are using technology right now. Perhaps the people that will watch this online, either live or the recording later on, will be much more than the small number that are here sitting in the room with me now, right? So technology is not necessarily something that is pure evil, and we say we don't use technology in seeking knowledge, we don't use technology in a way that will facilitate for us to reach to the knowledge. In actuality, we live in a day and age where there aren't many scholars on the face of the earth, unfortunately. And we will talk about what's the category of scholar versus student of knowledge versus layman, right? These 3 categories of people. So it can be difficult to have access, right? We get contacted sometimes through social media or online by people who are living in remote places, and they say, I don't have any masjid in my town. There are no Muslims here. Now I converted to Islam, how should I learn Islam? What do we tell them? If you cannot face-to-face meet with someone, remain ignorant, sit in your house and don't do anything? No. We tell them, you go online, there are many ways now to learn. There are online universities, Islamic universities. There are sheikhs who you can follow their classes live. You can ask them the questions. You can follow up with them through social media. So technology has enabled actually us to be able to seek knowledge. And it has eliminated the excuses. Because people will say, oh, I'm so busy, brother, I cannot come to the class all the time. So what do we say? Come when you can, and when you cannot, the class is recorded. Look at it at your own convenience. Make sure you don't miss it. You have no excuse to miss it. That's it. And many people will write to me, oh, brother, your weekly class, I missed it today, but I saw it online, alhamdulillah. So I know that the person has the chance to continuously seek knowledge in that, for example, weekly class. They have no excuse to say, I couldn't make it on time, I couldn't make it to that location, so on and so forth, right? So technology has facilitated something for us. But is it better to attend the class online or in person? In actuality, it's better to attend in person. The scholars have said, for example, even when you attend a class in person, it's better for you to sit in the front close to the Sheikh than in the back. Why? They said it's more likely you will be able to hear him clearly, you will understand what he's talking about, you will be able to focus with him because you don't have anything in front of you to distract you. When you sit in the back by the door, what happens? Every time someone comes in or leaves, you are distracted and you missed something that the Sheikh said, right? And that's when you're attending in person. How about when you're attending online at home? What happens? Oh, let me minimize his window. I can hear what he's saying, but let me check my email real quick, right? Oh, my kid just walked in the room. What is it that you want? Oh, can you make me a sandwich? Let me do that fast, and then I'll come back to the class. And so on. So there's a million distractions, actually. And we live in a world where we think we are super multitaskers. And they have done studies to show that the brain cannot multitask. There is no such thing, right? Except for maybe awliya Allah, those people who are very close to Allah. Sometimes we hear stories about them. In the middle of his sleep, he's reading Quran while he's sleeping and so on. These are special people. But normal people, their brains cannot multitask. You can only do one thing well at a time. There's no such thing as I'm attending the class and I'm doing something else at the same time. It doesn't work. Allah didn't give a person two hearts in their chest. They only have one heart, meaning they can only focus on one thing at a time. So, to attend the live halaqas is always going to be the better option. But, as we said, technology removes the excuses even for those that live in the remotest parts of the world where they don't have access to scholars. Even if you are extremely busy and your time doesn't allow you to come at the classes at the set time, you always have a way through technology now, alhamdulillah, to have access to knowledge. And even, as I mentioned, there are good sites out there that now give you knowledge systematically. For example, I recommend for those who convert to Islam, newmuslims.com. Amazing. They have 10 levels. Every level has 24 lessons. Each lesson has the notes ready, 2 pages. It has a video lecture where a Sheikh has explained it. It has a quiz at the end that you can do. Meaning, it's proper seeking of knowledge and studying. It's not just, I listen to many random lectures, right? This is something that some of us do. We click around on YouTube from one video to the next. We spent a lot of time, but we didn't really seek knowledge. Why? Because it's very random topics. It's not systematically studying. Because when you study, there's a proper way to study. For example, if I tell you, hey, you should become a doctor, and then you immediately go to medical school, does it work like that? Are there prerequisites before you go to medical school? You need to study some basic science. You don't become an engineer by going immediately for engineering. You need to do mathematics. You have some prerequisites. So too, you cannot become a scholar of Islam or even a student of knowledge, and you haven't studied any Arabic, you haven't studied any Quran first, and suddenly you are going for the deep, detailed topics and disputes among scholars. And we see this in young people. The young person comes and he says, I know what Sheikh so-and-so said on this issue and Sheikh so-and-so said on that issue. Then we say, brother, read Surah Al-Fatiha for me. And he cannot pronounce it correctly. A'udhu billah. What are you doing? You are pretending like you are an advanced student of knowledge and trying to bring the differences of opinion about scholars and which one is more correct than the other one. And you cannot even read Quran yet? What is going on? There's the ABCs you have to start with first, right? You have to walk before you can run. And some people are trying to fly and they didn't even learn how to crawl yet. So there is a proper way to seek knowledge, and that is usually with the teacher, and it's by doing things systematically, level by level, step by step, right? Not just randomly clicking around in cyberspace. And the last point that I would say also in regard to this is that da'wah, alhamdulillah, can be done using technology and social media now in a big way, right? those scholars who in the past maybe only could reach tens or hundreds of people, now they're able to reach millions, right? And their words of advice or the knowledge that they have given through video clips on YouTube, or even as we mentioned, courses and so on and so forth that they share online, they are able to reach literally millions and millions of people. And we have countless people that are converting to Islam every day. I know brothers who are working in this field, they say, I set up a website for making da'wah to people in China. How is it going? Oh, we have few people now become Muslim every day. Allahu Akbar, what? Every day, just because he created a website, spent some hours, created a website, put some information there, made a link where they can get in touch with people who can help them and guide them and answer their questions, and people are converting to Islam like that. Allahu Akbar, right? So even though we find there is a clamping down on Islam and Muslims, there's a clamping down on scholars and seeking of knowledge, but every time a door closes, a few other doors open up, right? I'm telling you now, this one is making da'wah in the heart of China, right? Where China is clamping down and going against Islam in no other way. I mean, one of the worst regimes in the world in how they are treating Islam and Muslims. But look at how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opens other avenues, and suddenly their own population is converting, and before they know it, there will be thousands or millions of new Muslims in their country, whether they like it or not. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants His religion to spread, and it will spread whether people like it or not, as Allah said, وَلَوْ كَرِهَ الْكَافِرُونَ. Even if the disbelievers dislike and hate that would happen. Umar ibn al-Khattab, when ending just on this sort of topic, Umar ibn al-Khattab, he said, radiallahu anhu, what I fear most for you is a hypocrite with a knowledgeable tongue. And this is the danger of the online world. Because sometimes, especially when we don't have deeper knowledge, proper understanding yet, we can get easily tricked by anyone who speaks in a way that sounds knowledgeable. Hey, he said a few Arabic words. Hey, he quoted ayah. Hey, he mentioned some old books. Hey, he mentioned an old scholar. Hey, he quoted this, he quoted that, right? I remember in America, I went in the university that I graduated from, to a class. I wanted to see what it was about. There was a man teaching tafsir. They're teaching Islamic classes as subjects in university that people can take. I took a class on Islam, for example, taught by a Durzi. Durzis are a very minority deviant sect from the area of Syria and Lebanon, right? They don't consider themselves Muslims. They have their own book, their own people that they follow as so-called prophets and so on. This man is the one teaching the Islam class in the university. What version of Islam he's going to teach? Even when the students would ask some questions, perfect da'wah opportunity, he will never take it. He will try to take it in a different direction to push them away from Islam, and they are inching closer and closer to Islam. So I went to this other class on tafsir. I said, there is this man teaching it who became like the main reference and scholar for some groups of young Muslims that I grew up with, who called themselves, we are progressive Muslims. We are reformed Muslims. And they go against the basic tenets and teachings of Islam, and they came up with their own weird interpretations and version of Islam, a version that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and his companions never came with or authorized, right? So I said, who is this guy that teaches them? When you go and sit with him, he studied where? He studied in Imam Muhammad bin Saud University in Saudi Arabia. He knows Arabic, he can quote all the old books, but then he also studied in Israel. Oof. He studied his Islamic studies and tafsir in Israel. What? So now when he talks, he sounds very authoritative. When he gives interpretations, you will say, wow, he understands the Arabic language. He's not just talking like that. He's not like we only refer to the English version, some of us, and then we say we are scholars. You cannot go back to the Arabic. You are not a scholar. You will never be a scholar without Arabic. He has Arabic. He has some tools, right? But what's his agenda? Who is funding him? Where exactly did he learn his knowledge from? And what is he using that knowledge? We found that he is misguiding the youth and taking them in a completely different direction away from the straight path. So we have to be careful. Why? Because those people are also using technology, and they are also putting up their own sites, and their sites have a facade that gives you the impression of, wow, academic, wow, scholarly, wow, it's knowledge-based. It's not just opinions and conjecture, no, but they are using that knowledge to twist and manipulate. May Allah protect us. Now, that's all I want to say on this kind of technology topic, to be honest, right? you guys said come and give a talk about Sheikh Google, but the actual topic that we need to talk about is seeking knowledge. What is the value of knowledge? What is the importance of seeking knowledge? What are the traits and characteristics of a true knowledge seeker? How is it that I should seek knowledge in the modern age? And I don't think I can cover all of that. Maybe we can follow up on future talks, but I'll try to cover some of the points. The first thing I want us to recognize is we need to baseline, where are we today? Brothers and sisters, we live in post-colonial ignorance. Yes? The Muslim world was colonized. The colonizers, when they came in, the first thing they did is deconstruct the education system. Now, if I bring for you an Egyptian, or I bring for you a Moroccan, or I bring for you someone from any of the Arab countries in the world, and I put him on the spot now, and I tell him, give a 20-minute talk in formal, proper Arabic, he cannot do it. He cannot do it. The average Arab Muslim cannot speak Arabic, much less the rest of the Muslim world. Do you think in the past we used to be like we are today, where the majority of Muslims don't know Arabic? Why Malay used to be written in Jawi, in Arabic script? Why? Because Malays used to know Arabic. Why the Turkish and the Kurdish and the Somali and all these other languages around the Muslim world used to be written in Arabic script? And the first thing the colonizers did is come in and say, use Latin letters, you don't use this anymore. It's forbidden in Turkey and other countries even to write in Arabic script and to use Arabic names, and, right? When they came into Egypt and these places, Egypt is one of the most important Arab countries in the Muslim world. If it's doing well, then the Muslim Ummah will do well. If it's down, then the Muslim Ummah will be down. 90 million Muslims in Egypt versus the other Arab countries. I'm from Libya, the neighboring country, we are 5-6 million, nothing. Egypt is important. So, destroy the education system. So now Egyptians speak Egyptian. If I ask the Prophet ﷺ to come now today and speak with an Egyptian, he will understand the Egyptian and what he's saying? Not at all. Not at all. The Egyptian is speaking another language completely. Completely. So there was a systematic effort by your occupiers, colonizers, and oppressors to destroy the Islamic education system. Step one, make them go for this Ammiya, slang. No more formal, proper Arabic. So when they read Quran, they say, I don't know what Quran is talking about. The average Arab does not understand Quran correctly. He can understand some words, but he doesn't get it all. He cannot understand the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. He cannot go back to the old books of the scholars. I have Arab relatives, I'm half Arab. When I have them listen to any Arabic lecture from a scholar in formal Arabic, they said, no, I couldn't quite understand what he's saying, what he's talking about. Wow. When I was studying in Jordan Arabic, we would go out into the marketplace, we speak formal Arabic, the Arabs in the market laugh at us. Hey, what are you doing? Why are you talking like that? Because we're non-Arabs and we're learning Arabic, that's why. Can you try to speak back to me in formal? He cannot. He tries. And it sounds very silly and childish as he tries to speak formal Arabic. Can you imagine? So we are laughing, but it's something which is sad. It's sad. There was never a time in the history of the Muslim Ummah where we were as ignorant as we are today. And ignorance and knowledge here, I'm talking about what? I'm talking about religious knowledge. Maybe we have very knowledgeable people in working in NASA, and we have engineers, and we have people in technology, and we have a lot of knowledge in the Muslim world in engineering and medicine, and. But how about in Islamic knowledge? In the past, it was something basic that every Muslim, all these great scholars I was mentioning to you, Imam Bukhari was an Arab? No. Many of the scholars of Hadith, the scholars of the Arabic language, some of the greatest scholars of Arabic language, they were Persian, they were not Arab. But what made them so strong in Arabic was what? The religion of Islam. The only thing that preserved the Arabic language, why Arabic language even exists until today. Hebrew, Aramaic, other languages, they fell aside, they disappeared. Aramaic, the language of Jesus, peace be upon him. Most of the followers on the earth, they claim they are followers of Jesus. Any of them speak Jesus' language? No. Jesus' language still exists today? No. It's a Semitic language. There's maybe, they estimate 200,000 to 300,000 people on the face of the earth that speak some derivation of Aramaic. Some Armenians, some Chaldeans in Iraq, I met them in America, they're very proud. They say, we speak the language of Jesus. but not really. Sort of, some derivation after hundreds and hundreds of years. But Arabic has been preserved. Why? Only because of the Quran, only because of Islam. Otherwise, Arabic would have disappeared. And the colonizers and the Orientalists, they worked very hard. We have documented conferences that they had where they got together in the late 1800s, in the early 1900s, where they got together and they systematically talked about how to deconstruct the Islamic education system, destroy it. Brothers and sisters, now when I go and give lectures, and I'm giving lectures mainly to newly practicing Muslims, new Muslims, non-Muslims, but also many people who are born as Muslims, like in this kind of a class. In many of my classes, I will bring a book which is meant to explain Islam to a non-Muslim or a very new Muslim. But I will cover the title page because I don't want to insult the audience. I feel shy for them. And then I will teach from that book. At the end of the class, I will say, brothers and sisters, what you learned today, something new or you already know it? They said, oh, something new. We all learn new things. Allahu Akbar. It's not supposed to be something new for someone who was born and raised as a Muslim in a Muslim majority country. The fact that you don't already know what's in that book is a bad sign. It's very sad. It's embarrassing. Right? So, to recognize the state of affairs that we are in. For example, I should not be sitting here giving lectures. I studied business administration, I studied IT, I work in an IT company, I'm not a scholar, I didn't study decades Islam, I studied only for a short period of time. All I know is مَا لَا يَسَعَ الْمُسْلِمْ جَهْلُهُ. I know what every Muslim must know as a minimum, the basics. What they call مَعْلُوم مِنَ الدِّينِ بِالضَّرُورَةِ. Scholars categorize knowledge into that which must be known by everyone, and that which only needs to be known by specialists. Specialists meaning scholars, they must learn the details more and more, right? I know the basics, that's it. But I'm here speaking and some people will tell me after the class, brother, you are a great scholar of Islam. I said, what are you talking about? The fact that you say that means you know nothing about Islam. That's the problem. Our level is so low. When your level is very, very low, then even if someone is at 5%, for example, you will say what? Oh, he's at a high level. Why? Because we are sub-zero. When you are sub-zero, the one who's at 0 or 5%, you will say, hey, he's very high. Then the one who's at 5-10%, when he looks, he says, the other people, they are much, much higher. When you read about the Sahaba, you read about these great scholars, how much knowledge they have. Imam al-Suyuti, rahimahullah, he wrote a tafsir of Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim as an entire book, explaining Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, only this phrase. He wrote a whole book when he was in 2nd grade, 7, 8 years old. Now I'm 40 years old. I can write this book? I cannot. Probably I will have to go and research many things and try to figure out. He can just write it from his mind like that. What is the difference between us and them in knowledge? It's a huge, huge difference. See, the problem, there is ignorance. We call it jahl basit. But then there is jahl murakkab, complex ignorance. Scholars said this is where you don't know that you don't know. And this is what the Muslim Ummah is going through today. See, what happens is, if you look at, for example, the ocean through a telescope, right? You look through a telescope at the ocean, what happens? You see one circle, one spot of the ocean. If you think this is the whole ocean, catastrophe. So when you remove the telescope from your eye and you see the whole ocean, you say, hey, wow, the ocean is something different. It's not a little spot. It's not a pond. It's an ocean. There's no end to it. I don't know how to get to the other sky. That's why the scholars said the first sign that you have a little bit of knowledge, that you are starting to become knowledgeable, is that you say, I don't know. I have no knowledge actually. Why? Because you start to see how vast the knowledge is, and you realize that what you have traversed from the ocean is just a little bit. You still have a long way to go. That's why scholars who were in their 70s, 80s, and they dedicated 40, 50, 60 years of knowledge, and people will praise them and talk to them about their knowledge, and then suddenly they lower their head and they say, no, what are you talking about? I'm a small student of knowledge. I wasted a lot of time. I didn't reach that high. I didn't do as much as I could have and should have done. I barely know anything. Because their knowledge started to open for them what knowledge really is. It's an ocean. You cannot drink the ocean. You cannot boil the ocean. You cannot walk across to the other side of the ocean. It's too vast. So when the Muslim starts to realize that, then they recognize that I don't have much. And the danger when we are first starting to seek knowledge is that you don't even realize how big and vast the knowledge is, After a short period of seeking knowledge, you may suddenly feel proud of yourself. Oh, I have knowledge. Why? Because, oh, my parents didn't know about this thing. When I talk to people, they never heard of this fatwa. You know, I googled this thing, I watched this video, most people don't know about that thing. So you start to have pieces of information that others don't have, so you feel you are what? Superior. I have more, I'm better. But this is a dangerous stage, the scholars said. Because in actuality, the sign they said that you really have knowledge is that you become humble. They said the tree that has lots and lots of fruit, it does what? It hangs low. The tree that has lots of fruit becomes heavy, it hangs low. So you imagine the scholar who has so much knowledge, he bows his head. Why? Because the knowledge humbles him. Because once he has knowledge, he knows who Allah is. He knows what Allah deserves. Once you know who Allah is and what He deserves, you will recognize that you didn't give Him what He deserves. So you will feel shy, you will feel ashamed of yourself. You haven't done what Allah needs and wants and deserves. Then once you have knowledge, you know yourself. When you know yourself, then you know your flaws, you know your faults, you know your sins. The ignorant doesn't even think he's committed sins. We talk to people about tawbah and repentance and fear Allah, and then they say, brother, I haven't done anything wrong. What are you talking about? Brother, I never murdered anyone. I didn't rob any bank. Why you are talking to me like I'm a big criminal? Hey, this means you didn't understand anything. You don't know what the rights of Allah are. You don't know how you are definitely falling short in His rights. The Prophet ﷺ said as an example, a person prays and Allah accepted from him 1/10 of his prayer. 1/10. He started with that. Then he said, or maybe He accepted from him 1/9 of his prayer, or 1/8, or 1/7, or 1/6, or 1/5, or 1/4, or 1/3, or half. And he stopped at half. He didn't even go beyond half. He said, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may take the prayer and throw it back in his face like a wet cloth. Meaning, the prayer wasn't even worthy of Allah accepting it. Why? There was no concentration, no sincerity, no khushu', no, not done properly. You don't understand what you are saying. You're just mimicking some du'as, but you don't know what they mean. What kind of prayer is that? Prayer is something you have to understand. You have to know what you are doing, what you are saying. So look at that. The Prophet ﷺ is warning. Maybe you prayed for 5-10 minutes or 1 hour. Allah only accepted from you 1/10 of it, 1/9 of it. So the Muslim who thinks like, understands that, knows that, suddenly he's worried. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاء. The scholars are the ones that truly fear Allah. Why? Because they have knowledge, they understand, they know. This is the sign of knowledge. But when we are a fresh student of knowledge, we are still at the very, very low levels. We may become overconfident. We may become over proud unjustifiably. And the reality is, because the situation around us is so poor, so weak, so backwards when it comes to Islamic knowledge, we suddenly misjudge ourselves. What does that mean? For example, if many Muslims around us don't pray, so then the one who goes to Jum'ah prayer, he may say, I'm a very good Muslim. Why? Because I go to Jum'ah prayer once a week. Jum'ah prayer is enough. Then the other one who knows people like that, he says, these guys, I go to the masjid 2-3 times a week. I'm a great Muslim. Then the one he prays in the masjid daily, 1 or 2 prayers, he says, I am Shaykh al-Islam. Don't you guys know who I am? Kiss my hand when you see me. Right? So he becomes so proud. When you look at the Sahaba, one of them will say, if somebody missed the salah in the masjid, in jama'ah, without an excuse, we said he's a munafiq ma'lum al-nifaq. They said if he missed the salah in the masjid, in jama'ah, without a valid excuse, we consider him a hypocrite whose hypocrisy is very clear, no doubt about it. Can you imagine? Meaning, because the hypocrites, they'll come to the masjid daily. But they will miss which prayers? For example, Fajr and Isha. Because it's dark, they don't have electricity, no one can see in the masjid exactly who's there and who's not there. So they don't show up, because they're only showing up for what? Here I am, see my face. I'm a good Muslim, don't you know I'm your brother, I'm always there. So if the person is praying with this kind of intention of showing off and thinking they are better than others and so on, Allah will not accept it from you. The hypocrites of the past, they were better than the average Muslim of today. They pray in the masjid every single day. In this practice, they are not better, of course, because the thing that makes you better is the belief. But we need to be careful what we are measuring ourselves against. What is the yardstick? If it's today's world, post-colonial Islamic world is in a mess. We have a lot of work to do to try to bring ourselves back to a fraction of where we used to be when it comes to Islamic knowledge. And if you think about it, I mean, we respect and value knowledge. For example, if someone comes to you and says, brother, listen, I'm having chest pain here, and I don't know, maybe I should do a bypass, or maybe I should do like this or that, what do you recommend? What's your advice? Give me medical advice. What would you do? Will you Google it and then tell him, yes, do a bypass surgery, maybe I'll do it for you, don't worry. Huh? You will say, I'm not qualified, I'm so sorry. Please don't ask me such a question. Rush immediately to the emergency room if you have chest pain. Go see the specialist. I cannot help you. Right? If someone comes to you and says, brother, there's a crack in the foundation of my house, I don't know what I need to do. Maybe you can advise me on structural engineering matters, right? What will you say? This is about the safety of your family. The house may collapse on you. Go to an engineer. Go to an architect and a contractor immediately. I cannot help you. I'm not specialized in that, right? But when it comes to Islamic things, and you can see it now, especially with the advent of social media and technology, everyone is a mufti. Everyone has an opinion. Everyone starts saying, I think and I feel. Who cares about what you think and what you feel on this religious matter? We want to know, what did Allah say? What does the Prophet ﷺ teach us on this matter? And this is more dangerous than medical advice, more dangerous than engineering and structural advice on your home. Why? Because you're talking about your hereafter. You're talking about paradise or hellfire. You're talking about your future. Imagine the son into the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ, and he will come to one of the Sahaba who was a student of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. He learned from the source. He learned from the best teacher. He graduated from the best university ever. They will say, please give us a fatwa on this matter. He will say, I'm sorry, ask somebody else. He will push him to the next one. He will go to the next Sahabi. The next Sahabi will say, I'm sorry, I cannot answer you. Ask somebody else. He will push him to the next Sahabi. He says, I will go through tens of Sahaba. All of them refuse to answer my question. They are too scared to answer because they are afraid they may give a wrong answer. Can you imagine? Once, a man from North Africa gathered all the questions from his people. And he got on his camel or by foot and he traveled for weeks and months from Morocco or Mauritania area over to Medina al-Munawwara to find a scholar to ask these questions. He came to Imam Malik rahimahullah. And this is a famous story, maybe some of you know it. He comes to Imam Malik. Imam Malik was so knowledgeable, they said if Imam Malik is present in Medina, no one has the right to give a fatwa. Because he is the mufti, he is the most knowledgeable one. He came to Imam Malik, he said, Imam Malik, these are 40 questions from my people. Imam Malik rahimahullah answered how many of the questions? Huh? He answered 4 of them. I remember 4, maybe 2. He answered only a few of them. For the other 36, he said, I don't know. Right? He said, I don't know. So the man said, my people, they paid money for me to come here. They gave me the money for me to travel. You know, it's expensive. You need food, transportation, everything, lodging. He said, what am I going to go back and tell them? I came all the way here. They're waiting for these answers. I'm going to go back and give them the answer for the 4 questions out of 40. He said, you go back and you tell them Imam Malik said he doesn't know. That's it. Right? He's not going to make up the answer if he's not 100% sure. And he's a great scholar of Islam. And we have attended few classes and then we are muftis. How can it be? How can it be? So this is the danger of technology and social media. It has given a platform for everyone, but that's a dangerous thing actually. Right? Even we can see it in misinformation when it comes to this, what they call fake news and all of that, right? Riots are being started and people are even killed or hurt because someone sent a rumor, sent a gossip. So it's a very dangerous thing. You have to be careful. You cannot just forward everything that you receive. You are accountable. It's as if you said those words when you forward it on. You have to validate and verify. And when it comes to religious matters, it's better for you to stay quiet than to give the wrong answer. The scholars said, if you give the right answer and you didn't know that it's the right answer, you weren't sure, you're sinful. Can you imagine? You give the right fatwa. Someone says halal or haram. You say haram. And you are right, but you weren't sure. You just guessed. You just gave it, but you didn't know. You were in doubt. The scholar said you are sinful for that. Even you gave the right information. That's how dangerous and big responsibility it is. So treat Islamic knowledge with even more respect than you treat medical or engineering or any other field, because the ramifications of it are bigger. You are talking about the rights of Allah. You are talking about paradise and hellfire. You are talking about people's hereafter. Okay. The next thing I want to talk about is what are the three levels, I mentioned them earlier, that people can be classified into. So the levels in Arabic are called mujtahid, talib ilm, and al-awam. Right? A person is either a mujtahid, a student of knowledge, or a layman. Layman means I'm not specialized, I'm just an average Joe, right? It's just like the one who comes for medical advice and he says, I'm not a doctor, nor am I a medical student, I don't know. I'm just looking for the doctor to guide me and I'm going to follow him. Whatever he tells me to do, I do. When he tells me do, I don't say, do the experiment and prove it to me. Show me all the research. I need to wait in a 10-year study before I'm going to take this medication. No, he tells you, take this medication, trust me, and you trust him and you follow. Right? So too, when it comes to Islamic knowledge, these are three different levels. The highest level is the mujtahid. The mujtahid is the one who can do ijtihad. Have we heard of this term before? Are we familiar with it? What does it mean? What is ijtihad? What is ijtihad? Ijtihad is where you strive to deduce the Islamic ruling regarding a matter. Okay? It's where the scholar will put effort, will strive and struggle, use their knowledge and their research and so on to try to determine what is the ruling regarding this matter. Is it halal or haram? Is it allowed or not allowed? Is it an obligation or just a voluntary action? And so on. Right? So this kind of an ijtihad is something that only the qualified person is allowed to do. Right? And if you look, scholars have listed down many different conditions. We don't have time maybe to talk about all of it. But Imam al-Shawkani, rahimahullah, for example, he listed down 6 conditions. He said if someone doesn't meet these conditions, he cannot be a mujtahid actually. Right? The mujtahid, for example, أن يكون عالما بنصوص الكتاب والسنة. He must have knowledge about Quran and Sunnah. Does he have to memorize all the Quran and this and that? Not necessarily, but he has to have knowledge about the ayat, he has to have knowledge about ahadith, right? Deep knowledge. It's someone who has studied for a longer period of time. He's specialized, like a doctor who goes for years and studies medical school, right? Number 2, he has to know what issues there is ijma' about. Which issues is there some consensus about? Sahaba, for example, in general have come together, or all of them have agreed on such and such matter, that this is, for example, haram. We don't accept some shmo to come today and say, halal. We don't care about what the previous generation said. They are people, we are people, and we can make any fatwa we want in this day and age. No. They are people who could confidently say, there's no verse of Quran that was revealed, except I know exactly when it was revealed, where it was revealed, why it was revealed. The verses of Quran were revealed about them, in their time, in their language, in the Arabic that they understood at that time. There's no comparison between us and Sahaba, for example, right? When it comes to the understanding of the knowledge, the access to the knowledge, the authenticity of the knowledge, right? So, when there's ijma' on a topic, ijma' means a consensus, then there's no room for people to come and try to make some ijtihad in it in actuality, right? It's issues where there's a strong difference of opinion that then we start to talk about which opinion is the more correct and more valid, right? And there are very, very clear issues where the hukum is there, the ruling is there, there's no room for fatwa, right? Is riba haram or halal? We need a fatwa? We don't need a fatwa. It's clear in the Quran and Sunnah, riba is haram. Is alcohol halal or haram? We don't need a fatwa, it's haram. But where might you need a fatwa is someone who is in a very extreme situation, right? Somebody may come and say, I'm in this situation where I may die if I don't drink this thing. Is it allowed for me in such a situation? He's asking about a special context. So then he may need a scholar to help him understand and decide what is it that he may be allowed to do in that situation. Even though that thing is haram, sometimes you may have to do something haram, right? Al-darurat tubih al-mahdhurat. This is a rule in Islam. Number 3, أن يكون عالما بلسان العرب. He must know the Arabic language. So the one who says, I'm a scholar of Islam, brother, can you speak a few words in Arabic? He doesn't know how to speak at all. Read some Quran, his pronunciation is all wrong because he doesn't know any Arabic. This person cannot go back to the sources. He cannot go back to the Quran and Sunnah. He only can rely on others who have interpreted and explained it and translated it to other languages. The mujtahid needs to go back to the original source. Otherwise, you are not a mujtahid. You are just a copier and a follower of others. The mujtahid, it's haram for him to copy and follow others, the scholars said. He must investigate and determine what he believes to be the ruling on this matter. He cannot just blindly copy others the way people at our level do, right? This is the mujtahid. This is the real scholars. Number 4, أن يكون عالما بأصول الفقه. He must understand usul al-fiqh, the principles by which you derive the rulings in fiqh. These are the foundation, the principles by which you will then go into the Quran and Sunnah and do istinbat al-ahkam min al-adillah. How do we derive the rulings from the evidence, the ayahs and the hadith? I need to understand there are rules for how you do that. It's not just willy-nilly. Somebody will say, oh brother, mashallah, I'm very sunnah based. How is that? Oh, I open Bukhari, I read, when I find the hadith, then I practice and I follow the hadith. This is the way. This is not the way. A'udhu billah. You have multiple ahadith on the same topic. You have multiple ayat on the same topic. Which one came first? Which one was revealed first? Did one abrogate the other one? Which one may be specific and the other one is general? And the specific one comes to apply some constraints on the general evidence. We have to understand how this works, right? So the average person cannot do that because he hasn't read enough yet. He hasn't studied enough yet. So just saying, oh, I follow Bukhari, I go and I read, and any hadith I find, I just literally apply exactly what I read there. This is not a way to practice Islam. This is not a way to learn Islam. It's very dangerous, right? So the mujtahid, he has these tools and these principles from usul al-fiqh. The 5th condition, they said, أن يكون عالما بالناسخ والمنسوخ. He knows the abrogated. Right? What abrogates what? There are some verses came later on, some sayings of the Prophet ﷺ came later on, and they may nullify the previous ruling which was only temporary. Right? We know that there are verses in the Quran that came down gradually. For example, the ruling regarding alcohol. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed, don't approach the prayer while you're intoxicated. So at that time it was legal for them to drink, but then it said, don't pray if you're in a drunken state. Which means you have 5 daily prayers, you're never going to drink too much in the daytime because you cannot be drunk. It'll take too long for you to be undrunk to pray on time, right? So it puts some restrictions on them. Now if a Muslim comes today and says, hey, as long as I don't get drunk, it's okay for me to drink. There are some Muslims now that say this. You can drink, but don't drink too much. We said, no, sorry, this doesn't apply anymore. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed the conclusion of it, which says alcohol is forbidden. The Prophet ﷺ has said that even if a lot of it will intoxicate you, then even a little bit of it is forbidden for you to drink, and so on. And then they bring lists of other, conditions and so on. We won't go through all of it, but just to give you some idea, who is the mujtahid? The mujtahid is not the average person who attends lectures and so on. The next level is the student of knowledge, right? The student of knowledge is someone who really rolls up their sleeve and dedicates themselves and says, I want to learn. But as we mentioned, learning then means you do so systematically. So even if the person says, hey man, I watch 5 hours of video on YouTube on a regular basis, all about Islam, for sure I have good knowledge. No, but there's an order of operations. Just like the medical student has to study certain topics first, so too we have to study certain topics first. You must start with the Arabic language. You must start with the study of the Quran. These two are often neglected in Islam, in the Islamic world today. Right? We find some people, they have gone to the very detailed issues and differences of opinion of scholars on this matter and that matter, and they memorized all of it. But like we said, you bring him back to, can you read Surah Al-Fatiha for me? Can you talk intelligently about Surah Al-Asr for 5 minutes? He cannot. And this is the shortest surahs in the Quran, Come and explain to me what is Inna A'tainaka al-Kawthar about. You read it in your prayer maybe 6-7 times a day because you only memorize the last 10 surahs of Quran. And he cannot talk about it. Then he's telling you, Sheikh so-and-so said, and the fatwa is this, and that's haram. Get out of here. What are you doing? You have no qualification to talk about those matters whatsoever, right? You can imagine someone who is not a medical student and then he's coming and debating the difference of opinion amongst surgeons about some kind of a procedure. It doesn't fit, right? It doesn't fit. So the student of knowledge is someone who dedicates themselves, really is going to put energy and time. All of us should wish to fall into that category. But it's not easy, right? It requires dedication and effort. If you tread down that path, as we mentioned in the hadith at the very beginning, then you fall under the category of what? The one who Allah is going to make their path to Jannah easy. So you want to be on that path. You want to be on that path. Okay? So here they said, طالب العلم المتمرس في طلب العلم حتى صار لديه القدرة على الترجيح بين أقوال العلماء. The goal of the student of knowledge is that he reaches to the point where he can try to differentiate between various opinions of mujtahideen and scholars, which one he feels more comfortable with, which one he feels is more close to the truth, and therefore he's going to follow that one. So this person then, he also should not be what? A blind follower. Right? He cannot do blind taqleed, because he has some capability to look into the evidence, to understand there are some ayat, there are some ahadith, this hadith is weak, this hadith is authentic, the scholar has said that this hadith happened later on in the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, so really we should be applying this, and so on and so forth. He can try to follow the argument of the scholars, because scholars, when they give also their rulings, they shouldn't blindly pass it down like that. Because we are not following them as our messengers, we are following Muhammad ﷺ. So any mufti who comes, we tell him, excuse me, your fatwa is nice, but what's the daleel? What's the argument, the evidence behind it? Are there verses of Quran? Are there hadith? How is it that you are saying that this is halal or haram, right? We look for the evidence. So the student of knowledge, his job is to try to look into that further and then follow what he believes is most likely the truth. He doesn't do his own ijtihad, but he follows the ijtihad of others. But he does it with some basira. He opens his eyes. He's not just blindly following, right? Now what happens to the layman? The laymen, if they are at such a low level, which is the level of most of the ummah today, as we had previously mentioned, if we baseline ourselves properly, then we are actually muqalladeen. We are copiers, we are followers. Now you may hear some scholars, past and present, they speak very harshly about taqleed, right? They'll say taqleed is haram, taqleed is like this, taqleed is like that. What they are referring to is one of two things. Number one, depending what category you fall in, taqleed may be haram for you. The mujtahid, it's haram for him to do taqleed. The scholars agree. If he has the capability of determining the ruling himself, he cannot just blindly follow somebody else. He has to determine for himself and follow what he believes is the truth. You know what he will say when he gives the fatwa? He said, هَذَا مَا أُدِينُ اللَّهَ بِهِ. This is the deen that I have between me and Allah. Which means what? Allah will judge him on the day of judgment according to his deen. You understand what that means? For example, there may be two different opinions on a matter. Is it wajib to cover the face with niqab or not? When we pray, do we go down hands first or knees first? These are differences of opinion that exist. Now, do we say that one opinion will get rewarded and the other opinion will be sinful? No, the scholars have said if they have done ijtihad, if they have done a proper investigation, and they believe their opinion is based on Quran and Sunnah, and they are following the truth, then Allah will reward them even if their opinion is wrong. This is the kindness and generosity of Allah. The Prophet ﷺ said, the judge who judges correctly, Allah will give him what? Double the reward. The one who is wrong, he will still get rewarded. Why? Because of the effort he put in searching for the truth. Some people, they will say, why we need to work so hard to study and learn Islam? We have to search and we have to research and we have to find out there's difference of opinion, it's confusing for me. I just want one long list that says, do, don't do, and that's it. I don't want any confusion or difference of opinion. The reason is seeking knowledge and seeking truth is a great act of worship. It's an act of worship in and of itself. Right? So when you are searching and you are putting effort and you are working hard to determine what is the truth, you are proving your sincerity. Oh Allah, I want to find out what is the right way to worship you. So even though there's this difference of opinion on this matter, I'm actively trying to search. I'm not doing fatwa shopping looking for the cheap, easy way out. No, I'm looking for which one is the real opinion. Why? Because that's what I want to follow to get close to Allah, because I love Allah and I want Allah to be pleased with me. So even if I find the correct opinion is hard on me, goes against my personality or my culture or whatever it is, it doesn't matter. I'm willing to do it. I'm ready to do it. Why? Because I'm in search of the truth. And by striving and working hard to find the truth, Allah raises people levels. That's why He said, يَرْفَعَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَالَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمَ دَرَجَاتٍ. Allah raises people of knowledge to different levels. Why? Because of their sincerity, because of their effort, their hard work, searching for the truth, and then sharing and spreading the truth with others. Right? So if you had everything, there's no difference of opinion, it's just one long list everyone has to follow, that will, number one, make it very difficult and people will not be able to succeed in doing it. Number two, you lose out on this great field of striving and opportunity to get to higher and higher levels by trying to find the truth. And scholars can search and work their whole life always trying to determine what the truth is, and it never ends. You never give up. And that's something actually enjoyable for them. They don't say, oh, it's so hard, I got tired, I wish it wasn't like this. No, the more they search and seek, they never give up. Some of the scholars, by the time they reach to the end of their life, you will find he's giving 10, 12, 15 lectures a day. To the point that he talks so much, when he coughs, blood will come out. Then he said, oh Allah, this is for you. This is for your sake. This is what I'm suffering, going through hardship, is for you. But he didn't find it as a hardship. He enjoys. You will find some of the scholars, they are still alive today. He's 80, 85 years old. From after Fajr, he's sitting. He gives lecture for 1 hour about tafsir. Then he gives lecture, 1 hour about fiqh. Then he gives lecture, 1 hour about Arabic language. Then he gives lecture. Lecture after lecture. The students sitting in the lecture, they can barely bear to take one or two. And he's giving one after the other, and he's double and triple their age, and he doesn't give up. He enjoys it, and Allah gives him energy and barakah in his seeking of knowledge. Why? Because of the sincerity. Okay, all of that was introduction. We didn't get to the topic yet. I wanted to start talking now about the importance of knowledge, the traits of the knowledge seeker, and how to seek knowledge, but I think we're out of time. So this is an introduction. Hopefully we can get some flavor for the danger of using technology in the internet, but how it also is a double-edged sword. There's a lot of benefit. It's a great tool. You just have to have some guidance, especially in the beginning when we are first starting out in our seeking of knowledge. We need to go from the recommendations of trustworthy and educated people. What are the good websites to go to? Who are the good people to listen to and learn from if we're going to learn online? And preferably you're coming to a class. Reading and studying on your own is not sufficient and quite dangerous. Scholars have said, if books are your only teacher, then your mistakes will be more than your correct points. Why? Two people can read the same book. Do they both understand it the same way? No. Everyone has their own interpretation, their own understanding based on their experience, their past, their knowledge. So you could read something and understand it incorrectly. It can even happen in a class. I give lectures afterwards. I say, brother, well, give me key points you learned from my lecture. He'll bring something I didn't even say or talk about. I said, what? Where did you come with that stuff for Allah? Or he'll give me a point which was very secondary, like a joke I made or a silly story I told, and I said, that was not the main point I wanted you to walk away with, right? So everyone has their own way in communication of understanding and receiving the message. Without a teacher to ask you questions, for you to ask him questions and to learn from, most likely you will not get a proper, solid, and correct foundation. And there's a good chance that that can misguide you and you may give up along the way, or you may completely go astray, and that's very, very dangerous. May Allah protect us. Okay? We've recognized the level that the ummah is at and how much work we need to do to get back. By us coming to these centers and these classes, alhamdulillah, we are taking that step in the right direction. The critical thing is to be sincere and to ask Allah to guide us. He can guide us through all the confusion. Allahumma arini al-haqqa haqqan. Oh Allah, show me the truth as the truth, and bless me to follow it. And oh Allah, show me misguidance as falsehood and misguidance, and bless me to avoid it. Right? Only Allah is the one who can guide us and help us. And the Prophet ﷺ was commanded in the Quran to ask Allah to increase him in one thing and one thing only. قُلْ رَبِّي زِدْنِي عِلْمًا. Oh Allah, give me more knowledge. He didn't ask, oh Allah, give me more health or longer life or more money or more children or more fame or more this or more that. None of it. Only one thing, oh Allah, give me more knowledge, because knowledge is valuable. The Prophet ﷺ said, whoever Allah wants good for them, then Allah will give them fiqh fi deen. Allah will give them good understanding in the religious knowledge and the religious matters. That's a sign that Allah loves you. But money, fame, wealth, it's a test from Allah, not necessarily a sign that Allah loves a person or doesn't. Jazaakumullahu khayran. Do we have a question answer time or no?
Yes.
We do? Yes. Okay. Can we open it now then for question and answer? Any questions, comments, corrections? Please feel free.
Well, I've got a question.
Mhm.
In regards to I've heard the story where people come to the Sahabi, ask questions, and you refuse to answer questions, and refer.
Right.
If people come to you now, and they see that you may have some knowledge to whatever question they have in mind, so what do? Do we refer them to another person, and that functionally get put off at the end of the day?
So it depends on what your role and position is in relation to that person or in the community in general. So the question the sister asked, for those on the online or that didn't hear, she said, we heard this story about Sahaba refusing to answer questions and pushing someone to someone else because they don't want to bear the responsibility. But if we do that today and continue to do, maybe the person will never get the answer, or may get the answer from the wrong person. So I say it depends on what your role is. So for me, as a teacher in a community center where people come to me like new Muslims and non-Muslims, and I do tell them in the beginning, don't take from too many sources, you may get confused. Try to focus with one class, one teacher, one set of books, go through that, then expand further and further. But if from day one you're going all over the place, you're going to get contradictory answers or viewpoints. Sometimes you're going to confuse yourself, right? So when they come to me and I don't know, I will clearly tell them, I'm sorry, I don't know, but I will ask for you and get you the answer. Because I'm in touch with students of knowledge, scholars, and so on, who know much more than me, and I teach in the first place what I've learned from them. So I always go back to them if I'm not sure about something. So if I know the answer, then I should answer and I can answer. If I don't know, then I cannot answer and I should say, I'm sorry, I don't know, or I'm not sure. Or sometimes I will tell them, I've heard this opinion, that opinion, I don't know which one is more correct, but I'll ask for you, something like that, right? So if we are in a da'wah position, as many of you are, mashallah, giving da'wah and street da'wah and things like that, don't feel shy to say, I don't know. People respect that. Because you are being honest, you are being authentic. You're saying, I'm sorry, I don't know, but I will find out. I'm not a scholar of Islam, I'm just sharing with you what I know, but I will get the information, right? If you're a know-it-all and you're just answering and you answer incorrectly, you could ruin them for the rest of their life by giving them the wrong answer, pushing them away from Islam, for example, right? So better to say, I will check, I'll get back to you. And that can open up a whole channel. Give me your contact number, I'll keep in touch with you, I'll email you the answer. Then you have a chance to keep on the communication even later, It's a da'wah technique. You also may choose in da'wah and in education in general, sometimes not to answer. So scholars taught etiquettes in how to seek knowledge. They said if you've asked your Sheikh a question and he's ignored or refused to answer, don't ask him again. Because he may have refused to answer for a couple of reasons. One, the forum where he's answering is not the right forum. For example, I hate it when I'm giving a lecture to non-Muslims and then a born Muslim in the group will ask me a very specific, weird question. That's not the right time. I don't need to talk to non-Muslims about that. They don't understand the basics of Islam at all. They will not get the context of this question. It's a very, very precise and specific question about a specific act of worship that they don't know what we're talking about at all. It's not the right context, right? So I may say, that's a good question, let's talk about it after the class, right? I don't want to answer it here now. Or I don't answer, why? Because I know that student's level of knowledge and he won't be able to understand the answer correctly. It's like if we gave the example in medical, somebody cannot explain a very advanced medical procedure or concept and the guy doesn't understand biology or chemistry at all. So too, if a person doesn't know the ABCs of Islam and they're asking a question that's too complex for them even to to comprehend because of the terminology and what goes behind it. So that the teacher may just ignore it and refuse to answer, or give a very general, generic answer because they don't want to confuse the student. All of that has to be taken into account, right? Allah knows best. Any other questions or comments?
There is a website called www.islamreligion.com. What do you think of that website?
I like it. It's one that I recommend to people and I use in my da'wah. Yeah. I know some of the brothers who are like linked with it directly or indirectly, and they've pulled together from different authors, different sources. It has good articles, especially the articles I like. And it's quite organized. So they have a section for atheists. For example, why should you believe there is a God, right? And then they bring series of different articles, and they have arguments in there and so on. And the English is quite good and so on. It's available also in a few different languages. So that is a good site, Islam Religion. Some of these sites are meant for non-Muslims, but the reality is if Muslims were to read and study them, they would benefit very much. And if you are in da'wah, you should be well versed with what you're giving out as material. Like if you're handing out pamphlets and you never read the pamphlet, it's a catastrophe. What are you doing? Allah says you enjoin people to do righteousness and you forgot about yourselves. You didn't do it yourself. So you have to read and seek knowledge and understand and know and have conviction. When you have conviction, you will be able to convince others. Jazakallah khair. I can try to provide a good list of sites if people want what is a list of trustworthy websites. We do make a bookmark at Al-Khadim and we give it in our class to the new Muslims and the attendees so they have it as a reference. It's a list of maybe like 10 different websites that are trustworthy. Some of them are academies like newmuslimacademy.org, for example, or newmuslims.com, where you can systematically study, islamiconlineuniversity.com as well. And then some of them are more these kind of sites like we mentioned with articles and videos and audios and PowerPoint presentations and so on.
You've got
Okay? You've got mail, huh? It's AOL days. Any other questions? Yes, sister.
You spoke about the benefits of attending classes in person.
Okay.
Are there evidences to say that, when you're attending such classes, the angels will descend upon the event?
Yes.
I've heard this before.
Yes, and I wanted to mention that and I forgot it. So Jazakallah khair for reminding me. The sister said, attending in person, do you get the benefit of angels attending and so on? Yes. The Prophet ﷺ said, but he did give it in a kind of specific context. So he said, whatever group gets together in the house of Allah. This is something that we are missing nowadays, that we don't really study in the masjid very much. Right? A lot of da'wah centers, educational centers, they've opened up outside of the masjid. The best place to be actually is the house of Allah. It's more likely you will pray the salah in jama'ah, right? Because the lecture will be right after or before a salah. It's more likely you're going to get the barakah of the angels because this is a place where the angels will be all the time, right? You sit after your salah in the masjid, the angels are continuously praying for you and it's as if you are still being rewarded, as if you are still in the prayer. The Prophet ﷺ informs us, right? So there's so many virtues about the masjid, you lose when you study outside of the masjid. No insult intended against the center, but just so we understand. Sometimes there are reasons we open centers and there are, politics with masajid. We don't always have the authority, we don't have the control, they don't allow us, whatever, right? All these issues are there. So, but to get the full benefit of this hadith, then the Prophet ﷺ brought it in a specific way. And these people come and they study the Quran, the book of Allah together. So the most important thing to study is the Quran. And this is very lacking in this day and age. When we study Quran, the main thing we only study is what? One thing. Tajweed. How to read it. But the Quran was revealed for this purpose. The Quran is a guide. It cannot guide you by you only reciting sounds and not understanding what it means. You must understand what it means. Allah says, لِيَدَّبَّرُوا, so that people can reflect and contemplate about its verses and its meanings, which you cannot do unless you understand what it means, right? So studying it is one of the greatest things. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Prophet ﷺ says, has angels come. The Prophet ﷺ informed us there are angels, they travel throughout the earth. They look for gatherings like this where Allah is being mentioned, the religion is being taught, right? And then when they find such a gathering, they call other angels around. and they begin to gather, and they encircle the whole gathering, and they are putting their wings down, this kind of respect. And they are listening, and they are stacking on top of each other, gathering, gathering, gathering. Perhaps hundreds or thousands of angels may attend. Imagine. Inshallah, our gathering is one of those gatherings, right? So, such a gathering, then what will come down on it? Mercy, sakina, tranquility and serenity and peace, right? At the end of that gathering, the people will get up to leave, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will choose some of the gatherings and say, arise from that gathering and all of your sins are forgiven. Can you imagine? Now the angels are so keen, they will say to Allah, and Allah already knows better than them, they will say to Allah, so and so, he didn't come for the reminder, he didn't come for the gathering. He came because he had something else. So you can imagine there's a class in the masjid, and one guy tells his friend, come meet me there at that time, right? So he comes to meet him there. So he came for a dunya thing. He didn't come for the Islamic reminder. The Prophet ﷺ says Allah will say he's included too. Because they are the group, the gathering, la yashqa jalisu. They are the group, whoever was even just sitting with them, around them, next to them, will never lose. Can you imagine? So even the one who was there, he wasn't maybe paying attention. He didn't come for the class. He will get included in the forgiveness and mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allahu Akbar. Now, does this include for online viewers or not? I don't know. We need a fatwa on that. I have no idea. We have to ask some scholars what they say, because it's a reality now, right? Someone may be giving a class in one place and hundreds or thousands are watching online from all over the world. Can they get included if that group was chosen to be forgiven or not? I'm not sure.
Somebody from Peru is watching you.
From Peru?
Yeah.
Allahu Akbar. So, I mean, Allah is generous and Allah is kind. We ask Allah from His bounty and His blessings. Okay, any other questions? Yes.
Just two questions. The difference between complex ignorance, when you told about jahil,
Yeah.
see, and the second one is jahil,
Murakkab.
murakkab.
Yeah.
And,
Jahil murakkab.
murakkab.
Right?
Okay.
Complex ignorance. It means you don't know that you don't know. So you don't know the thing, and you also don't realize that you're ignorant about it. Right? So we don't know much about Islam, but we may somehow think we do because of all those reasons that I mentioned, right?
What is the striking? Suppose if I'm starting from a layman to a student of knowledge,
Yes.
what are the striving, what is the period or what is the right efforts to put in to go from a layman level, that is mukhalidin, to a student of knowledge, between the transition between...
That really varies and differs, right? So how do you go from the brothers? The first question was, what is the terms for basic ignorance and complex ignorance in Arabic? It was jahl basit and jahl murakkab, right? And then I explained a little bit about what that is. The second question is, how do you go and how long does it take to transition from layman to student of knowledge? So that really varies depending on the person and their situation, right? You have things like age. The younger you are, sometimes it's easier. You have more free time. You can remember faster and so on. You have things like what your station in life is. The one who's married with kids and a lot of responsibilities is not like a single person who can find more time to learn and memorize and review notes and study and so on. It also takes into consideration things like intelligence and gifts that Allah gave a person, right? Imam al-Dhahabi rahimahullah, he drank Zamzam and he asked Allah to give him a golden memory, and Allah gave him a golden memory, right? Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah, they said he had to cover up all pages and lines that were in a book or the page so that he would only look one line at a time, because once he read something once, he memorized it in a photographic memory. To the point that if the other part was uncovered and he looked at it by accident, it will mix everything up. He'll get confused. He'll memorize it incorrectly. That's how strong his memory was. And just once he started to hesitate and he felt his memory wasn't as powerful as it had been, and he got terrified. He went to his Sheikh and he made poetry about it. He said, I went to Waqi', my Sheikh, complaining about my poor memory, which I'm sure his memory was still amazing compared to ours, right? But for him, it's like it dropped a level. And he said, my Sheikh Waqi' told me to stop sinning. Immediately, he told him, stop sinning. You're a sinner. Imam Shafi'i is a sinner. He's not committing any fraction of what we are doing today. And he went on and told him, because the knowledge of Allah is light and the light of Allah is not given to sinners. Imagine, right? So Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah, he said, I held myself to account and I said, what is it that I did that was a sin? He said, I was in the marketplace, and as I was walking in the marketplace, the wind blew and a woman's dress went up and I saw her heel. I saw her heel, the bottom of the back of the foot. So what do we say today when you're driving, the billboard is half naked people all over and disgusting images, and how will that affect our heart and our soul and our memory? It will affect it in a big way. The heart and the ears and the tongue are direct connection with the heart. I mean the eyes and the ears and the tongue. So whatever you input into that, it can spoil everything as well. So seeking knowledge, it needs changes to lifestyle if a person wants to be really serious about it. But we say in Arabic, "Ma la yudrak kulluhu, la yutrak julluhu." If you cannot get all of something, don't abandon all of it. Just because you can't get it perfectly or all of it or as fast as you want, doesn't mean you cannot do little by little. So something is better than nothing. The Prophet ﷺ said the continuous action is better than the big action if it is, the small action is better than the big action if it is something which is continuous, right? So the scholars have said, try to set for yourself some minimum. For example, I'm going to attend one class a week. By hook or by crook, I have to come. Cannot be one time I come, 2-3 weeks I didn't come, one time I came, then a month I was in Hadiraya open houses and weddings, and so I just don't have time for classes anymore. It cannot be like that. You will never learn like that. You will forget everything. By the time you come back, you're starting over again and so on, right? So you have to have a minimum you commit to. I want to have a relationship with Quran. Minimum, I'm going to read one page every day. That's it. At least one page. It takes me 2 minutes, 5 minutes, I'm going to read it. After a while, you find yourself what? Stronger, then you can increase. It's just like physical stamina. To have spiritual stamina, intellectual stamina, you have to exercise yourself. You don't come to the gym and do the 2-hour workout on day one. You'll never come again, right? But you do a 30-minute workout or a 10-minute workout. After a while, you can increase. If you do consistently, consistency is the key. Then you'll find yourself getting stronger and stronger. Same thing with seeking knowledge. Allah knows best. Okay?
This is Brenda from Lima, Peru. Because I forwarded this to Subang. So
MashaAllah.
she is asking for a recommended website for Muslims, preferably also in Spanish if you are aware of good websites.
So some of these that we mentioned are available in Spanish as well. Like IslamReligion.com is a good one, right? NewMuslims.com is a good one. NewMuslims.com with an S, yeah? Just as one word. NewMuslims.com. Okay? Another one is IslamHouse.com. Islam House has tens of thousands of books and videos in 75 different languages. 75. IslamHouse.com, right? Their budget for that website was millions of dollars. Right now, there's a concerted effort by some governments to completely destroy it and block it, unfortunately. But they translate it so much and they put it all online for everyone to learn from. Another one is IslamQA.com, available in multiple languages. They give you fatwas with evidence and so on. That kind of a site can be a bit dangerous though for the non-Muslim or new Muslim or newly practicing Muslim, because you may get confused, right? There's a lot of details, a lot of information, detailed questions. You may click one to the other and you get into very detailed topics that you don't need to learn yet. As we mentioned, there's an order of operations when we learn. We got to start with the basic concepts and topics first and then go to the next. I would recommend newmuslims.com for that, right? It goes systematically, 10 levels, level by level. So you'll study pillars of Iman in Islam in level 1 at a certain level. Then in level 2, you'll study same topics at a higher level. And they'll add in some new things like seerah of the Prophet ﷺ. And then in level 3, you'll add in something about usul al-fiqh. And level 4, you'll add in something about the Quran and so on, right? So that's a systematic way to study. Another one is newmuslimacademy.org. Right? This is also a systematic way that you can study. These are all like free. You can sign up, or you can even benefit from them without signing up, and then you can go in an organized fashion, level by level. Another one which has a lot of free programs, a diploma program for free, and then they have a paid program, and the paid program is also very cheap. Islamic Online University for Dr. Bilal Phillips.
Islam.
Yeah. IslamiconlineUniversity.com. So this one you can find a diploma program for free. Very nice classes taught by good educators. They've recorded videos. They have lessons. They have homework assignments. There are tutorial. What do you call them? Tutors or tutoring assistants. They call them, or some TA, I think. So these TAs will like mark your assignments, give you feedback and grades. So there's an interactive learning process going on. This is if you want to just do really online, right? Because you could not find a teacher, or you cannot dedicate the time and energy to come to a place to learn. This is an option. Right? Here in Malaysia, there are centers where you can do some organized study, like Aris Institute or a Nawawi or a Shafi'i, or a few of these centers that are around. They teach in English, and they do set programs, 6 months, 10 months, 2-3 times a week in the afternoon or evening or weekends, right? Where you could study topic from beginning to end. That's a real way to benefit, right? If you're just doing a once a week class, or if you're just doing random lectures on random topics, you're not really a student of knowledge, actually. And you're not going to progress very fast. Years and years, you may find yourself, you've only moved a few inches, unfortunately. Yeah? Maybe those talks will inspire you to be a good Muslim and to practice Islam, but you're not necessarily going to get that knowledge that'll take you to the next level, right? There's a difference between being a worshipper, a devoted worshipper, and being a knowledgeable worshipper of Allah and practicer of Islam.
Pertaining to the website you mentioned, can we have it in a written form?
Yes, yeah, but I'm just saying now because that sister's online, I don't know if she'll get it later if I share it in written format. I wanted to bring the bookmarks with me and I forgot, subhanAllah, to grab them yesterday. I may have one in the car actually, I can check, then I can hand it to you guys, you can have it right away. Inshallah. So you don't want to overwhelm yourself. There's actually tens and hundreds of good websites out there, but just stick to